Our second reading is by Frederick Douglass, July 5th, 1852. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. Third reading is by the UU Minister Reverend Peggy Clark. When this country was founded, the aspiration was high. The men who imagined it dreamed big, casting a vision of a world where all men were created equal, where rights were endowed by our Creator, transcending culture and the expectations of the day, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness would be allowed and enjoyed without infringement. It was a radical and new vision, born from Enlightenment optimism, inspired by scientific discovery. It was an intoxicating vision, as bold as the Protestant Reformation that had swept all of Europe. And they had the hubris to believe they could make it happen. They staked their claim in the Declaration of Independence and institutionalized it in the Constitution. They elected their first president, and when he stepped down, relinquishing power to return to the role of citizen, those founders believed they had lived to see their vision realized. A new president ran for office, and the republic was up and running. It was done, a new world order. Those men weren't distracted by the genocide they inspired, or the enslavement of other people they required for this nation to be born. They declared equality while swimming in a sea of inequality. When they declared all men were created equal, they meant white Protestant men. They didn't mean women. They weren't including Black people who'd been enslaved or those who were free. They didn't include Catholics, Jews, or people who didn't own land. They were so proud of their inclusivity, so inspired by their own cutting-edge philosophy, that they had no idea how narrow it was, how constrictive, how small a vision. So now we'll take a little bit of time to have some conversation, both here and online. What words or phrases caught your attention in any of the readings that we've shared this morning?
Bruce, he, him. As you're reading through the whole Declaration of Independence, I just started writing things down here. One side. King Edward, King Donald. And all the things that are happening now that are just so parallel to what was going on then, using Indians and hired army people, now using ICC and other against organized people in America. It frightens me. And they talked about how we need to do something. How can we make the change? And we need to make some kind of change. And we need to make it strong. We need to make it loud. And we need to make it effective.
I'm Jan, she, her pronouns. I just finished reading a book that is called How to Hide an Empire which is about the United States and our expansion into areas in the Caribbean and the Pacific and so forth. And the thing in the Declaration of Independence that struck me was when they were talking about soldiers being in people's homes, and also that the soldiers were committing crimes against people. And the United States having bases in many places where they are not really, the bases are not really welcome, and our soldiers are able to commit crimes that do not require that they be tried in the courts of those countries. It's up to the commanding officer to decide if there should be any punishment. And so I saw those parallels, and it is frightening that we have so many parallels, as Bruce pointed out, between that time, 249 years ago, and today.
Lynn, she, her. What struck me as I was listening to the Declaration of Independence, and they were going through all the crimes that King George had committed, is that the face of tyranny is the same through time and space. So many of the patterns, as Bruce was pointing out, that we saw then we're seeing again now. But we are a large and strong nation, and we have the resources to fight back. So I do want to be aware of the similarities, but I also want to be aware of the differences, and because I think it would be unwise of us to lose hope.
Speaking of tyranny, I have had the honor and privilege to get to know Jane Elliott of the Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes experiment. And she's been on my podcast twice. She's an amazing woman. She's very vehement about sharing her reading list. And the one on the top of the list that she says every American should read is a book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. And I started reading it 2 months after the last time she recommended it. And all I could say was, oh, I should have read this when she suggested it. It is powerful and meaningful and awakening. And it's not just about what's going on now. It gives the parallels in time to all of the societies that have faced what we're facing now. And it's a warning to us to stand up and that it's a reckoning and it's time for us to align. And this made me think about posting a long video on TikTok with the Declaration of Independence so that people can read it and go, wait, okay, I'm MAGA, but that's what Donald Trump did, and that's what he did, and that's what he's doing, and it's in the Declaration of Independence not to do it. Maybe it'll get them thinking, maybe, hopefully.
We have Beth here online.
Yeah, I don't remember the wording exactly, but at the point when you mentioned, the idea how this was such a new idea back in the time, this revolutionary, that, it gives you a bit of a thrill to think that we did that. We had people who got it started, but then and you think was kind of like a step in our evolution, in the evolution of humanity. And yet, because of all the ways that we haven't fulfilled it, and even the original writings and thoughts, and especially where we are today, there's so much more evolution that needs to happen. for us to get to a place where we aren't thinking it's us and them, and where we come to believe we're all alike, we're all in this together, and how glorious it would be if we all just saw ourselves as remarkable creatures here on this planet who could be problem solvers together.
I seem to remember having heard about a group of people, this would have been during the Vietnam era, on some 4th of July, started circulating a typewritten version of the Declaration as a petition to be signed, and they were catching all kinds of grief from people who thought they were a bunch of communists. I also couldn't help but notice that the colonists who signed this wanted more immigration, and they were opposed to tariffs. That's what the whole free trade thing was all about. So some things do change. How do either Frederick Douglass's perceptions or Reverend Peggy Clark's words change your understanding of the Declaration?
Well, it's not from the Declaration. When we finish our Pledge of Allegiance and say liberty and justice for all, we know that that's not been achieved at all. And I need to rephrase that. And it was difficult as a state employee for the state of California, going to some of my county meetings where they say the Pledge of Allegiance. First of all, holding my hand over the heart couldn't be done. And then it's liberty and justice for some. And I think that Frederick Douglass is sadly still timely reflection on today's state of equity amongst us.
This 4th of July was a challenging day for me and probably others. I get a text like, "Happy 4th." Like, can I even respond? But I think that, like, for my entire, so I was born in 1965, so my entire life, the part that I was aware of, age 10 and on or whatever, I thought or felt that we were on some sort of a path towards increasing that vision from the founders. And so it was sort of easy to be, discontented, yet feel that patriotism, right? Like, this is a country, even though I know they didn't mean this when they wrote out the Declaration of Independence, we've been able to, over these years, make that expansion, and it felt good. It felt like those are American values. And so this year it just feels like all that, what I would say progress, has been so quickly rolled back, or at least tried to roll back. And it's very painful to be aware of, and I don't know, that's so I recognize that the vision was narrow, and it feels like the vision is narrowing again, and that's hard.
There was an episode. Did anybody see CBS Sunday Morning today? They played a Charles Kuralt episode from 1975 when they were getting ready for the bicentennial. It's powerful. If you get a chance, look it up. It's Charles Kuralt. Walter Cronkite opens the show. They show Ellis Island. They show Charles Kuralt saying, "My father, Carl Kuralt, came from this building." It wasn't Ellis Island. It was the island before that, which was Chapel Island, I think, or Castle Island. Castle Island. And they were there for 50 years, bringing in, but there was none of the injustice that happened at Ellis Island. But 17 million came through Ellis Island. Every single one of us, for the most part, other than people who arrived by the Mayflower or Jamestown, we all came through Ellis Island. So I posted that. Probably offended their copyright, but I said it clearly, I do not own the copyright, and it's running. Lots of people are watching it. So hopefully they see it and go, so what we're doing is wrong. Yeah, it couldn't have happened 100 or 50 years ago.
Anyone online? Thoughts about how Frederick Douglass or Reverend Peggy Clark changed your perception?
Bruce, I'm not sure if it's directly from them. I'm growing up in a small white community. It was never thought of. It's never really brought up. Methodist Church, we didn't really bring it up. Schools didn't bring it up. It would have been called by Trumpy people revisionist history, bringing up the negatives, which now Trump is trying to eliminate. So what it made me think of, everything that Douglas, you're talking about, had said, I wonder how Trump and some of his people are going to try and remove that, because that isn't pro-American as he would like to see it, pro-white America. What are some of the other things that are going to be taken away, going to be disregarded, say, no, that didn't happen, that's not real? And that bothers me. Over time, I've been much more aware of how liberty and justice for some is more accurate than all. It's taken a while, because how many of you grew up hearing that and understanding that? I'm worried about what's going to happen now with revisionists and getting rid of all the other progress.
What ideas in the Declaration of Independence align with our UU values of justice, equality, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity with love at the center?
What if we wrote a new Declaration of Independence? And yeah, we can do it now. Who do we send it to? Do we send it to bold champions in Washington? Do we send it to Jane Elliott, Timothy Snyder, people who've written books that impact people? What is this? Does this idea appeal? Do we get together and just create it and put it in the hands of the right people? Do you think that would have an impact? Would it make a difference?
And who picks who are the right people?
Work on consensus.
Hi, this is Kevin, he, him. I think that I'm going to have to come back to just me. I can write my own Declaration of Independence. I can write my own Constitution. I can continue to live my values despite the tyranny, despite the gross indignities that our government are doing. But I also have to be listening out for others who are being impacted in ways that this privileged man does not get impacted. I work in the advocacy of HIV and AIDS, and while all of the timing of this bastard of a bill of finance is strategically meant for elections, we are going to find some services cut. And what can I do for those who were dependent on the services and can't get them anymore? So when I think systems and I think government and I think all of us, I get overwhelmed. But when I think me, I can continue and proceed. And my values don't need to be diminished because of a tyrant.
Thank you, Kevin. Any final thoughts?
This is Katie. I'm just thinking of the tension between independence and interdependence, right? Because we do want to be independent in the sense of being able to be self-determinant. We want people to be able to live their lives, generally speaking, in a self-determined way, but we're always going to butt up against that same right of someone else and need to be interdependent. Our own rights and independence is always going to be curbed by somebody else's right and need to be independent, and I don't have any solution. That's what I was thinking.
Well, a few years ago, gays were not accepted. Our values are changing. There's other things that include with that also.
I'm struck by the very last phrase in the Declaration where the signers pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor. Indeed, if the colonists had lost, all of the signers would have been hanged for treason. And while perhaps it's not being asked of us that we give our very lives, we can certainly live our lives. We can pledge what fortunes we have, and certainly our sacred honor would call us to live our values in full, rather than simply submit to a system that distorts and perverts them. Thank you all for your observations.